So in this episode 2 of Behind the Games, I want to talk about something that a lot of games miss, and most likely you have experienced this yourself when you play games, and this is character personality. And in this video, I'm going to use examples from a game that I worked many moons ago called Star Wars Battlefront II. Now, there's a lot of challenges to go from design to animation, in-game, and playable. We're going to talk through those. And in this video, I have quite a few examples from Battlefront, such as the Droidekas, the BB-8s, the Ewoks, and a few more. So I hope this sounds exciting to you, and if it does, then join me and let's get to it. Now, welcome to another video, and I hope you're doing well. Now, I've done part 1 of this video that basically talks about the behind the scenes of what happened in Battlefront 2 and some of the ups and downs that we had through our journey, and that was really enjoyable. And thank you so much to everybody that watched that and actually commented, and also fellow YouTubers out there that actually reposted what I've talked about, because it kind of tells me that there is an appetite for people to know what goes behind the games, and in this specific case, what goes behind Battlefront. So I thought in this video I would expand a bit more, because animation was such a crucial part of Battlefront 2 and how it felt and the success of the game, ultimately of how we actually got there. And this is what I want to talk about here. How do we go from a character that is on paper a certain way or on film a certain way, and then you will get it to game looking a specific way and feeling absolutely fantastic on that controller. Now, we're going to start with the process from day one. Okay, so what happens when we first get a character, right? In the case of a game that has an IP specific like Battlefront, this means that it's not just about EA or the studio to build something. It means that Lucasfilm, which is the parent company, basically the one that owns the Star Wars IP, they have a hold on the saying of what happens with the characters. And this happens for films and games and any other IP, because they are the gatekeepers of what the character does or how the character moves or whatever. So what happens is that we can actually suggest a design to Lucasfilm, and they have to review it before they actually approve it, so we can and then animate it. So this requires the designers to actually put something on paper on what makes the character unique in this world that we created called Battlefront. So I'm going to give you an example with Count Dooku, which is a character that I animated. Count Dooku is an interesting one because he shows up in the movie, and even though he doesn't last as much as Luke for sure, but he does last for quite a bit, and he has a personality. And how do you translate those things to the game? Now, Count Dooku, if you think about the movies, he comes across as a very vanilla character, so the designers had to pick up on the traits of the character, the specials that the character had to have in order to look different in game. But that goes as far as the rules of the game, how the designers can actually fit the character to have unique abilities, right? Now, what happens after that is that design goes off, and then it gets reviewed, and if approved, we can go on and actually start animating it. Now, but because we have the movies already, now copying the character from the movie to make sure that the fidelity is correct, but it needs to run well in game, I think that's the bit that is a little bit easier to basically approve, because as long as it matches, it's good to go. The design, the character might be doing something different, and that might be a little bit more complex. Now, if the design gets approved, then it's up to us in animation to actually find out how are we going to get this design to then animate in a specific Count Dooku way, because we have these specials. So how can we actually make them specific to Count Dooku? Now, in all honesty, when we started looking at Count Dooku and looking at the films, he actually didn't look very interesting, I should say, especially when it has that fight with Yoda. Yoda looks so much more interesting because he's jumping all over the place. One of the things that we pick up on is that he actually puts his hand behind his back while he's actually doing his swordsmanship, and that basically became a linchpin for us to look at the other references of people that actually then use the sword like this, right, in this style. Now, in Battlefront, we had archetypes, so types of characters that we can basically start basing things off. So Luke Skywalker became the base for Count Dooku, and the reason why it was only because we actually had the sword hitting in a specific way with Luke, and that was enough to kind of give us the basis of the metrics of what it is. And for those that don't know metrics, definitely check out the video that I made about metrics, but it basically gives us the distance that the character moves every single time that he hits a sword or gets hit behind. So we use that as a base for a specific character, so in this case Count Dooku, and now we know that the animations are there and we have the correct metrics, so we don't have to reinvent those again. And then we went and actually shot some mocap of this character doing these moves as best as possibly can. After we grab the mocap, we'll go ahead and start kind of like massaging it to make sure that it fits those metrics that we set up with early characters. And as I mentioned in the previous video, we started with Darth Maul, setting up those metrics and making sure that everything is fine, and then we move on to Luke as the second character. And now we're using Darth Maul for certain characters, we're using Luke for other characters, and we'll continue doing this for many other characters. Now each hero was taking about a month and a half to make. Each hero that we had to start from zero and create an archetype specific for that hero, that would take about 2 to 3 months to make. We got faster the more we got used to it, but it did take a while for us to actually make, for example, General Grievous. Now an example of other characters that we also had to start from zero and find out exactly how we're gonna make this movement set basically look good. Some examples was definitely the Ewok, the BB-8 was another one, the Droidekas was another one, and there's a bunch more that we had to basically start from zero and have to find out exactly how that looks. Now here I want to mention specifically the Droidekas, because Lucasfilm, being the gatekeepers of these characters, they want the characters to look right. We saw the movies obviously many times, and the only thing that the Droidekas do in the movies is they roll to a place, they stop, they open, they put their shields up, they start shooting, they close, and then they roll again. That's all we knew. So how do we make the Droidekas jump? How do you make the Droidekas fall? How do you make the Droidekas die? There's a bunch of different things that we had to find out, because those were the rules of the game, and the Droidekas need to fit within the rules of the game. So how do we actually make those happen? And the biggest problem that we had with the Droidekas specifically were the jump, because Droidekas don't jump in the films ever. Because what happens is, when you actually find that thing that actually makes the character move a certain way and is approved by the mothership, in this case Lucasfilm, it means that whatever you create most likely is going to become canon for whatever it is. And this was exactly the example with the Droideka jump. So we made the Droideka jump, it was approved by Lucasfilm after a bunch of back and forth, we had a bunch of examples to show them, and then when we put it in game and stuff, it felt really good, people were very happy with it. But what happens next is the stuff that makes me super happy, because now in the cartoons you can see the Droidekas jump, and they use pretty much the same animation that we did, which was amazing, and a bunch of other things as well. And this is basically the responsibility that you have on your shoulders. It might seem small because it's just a game, because it's just animation, because it's just design, but every single decision that you take can become something that becomes bigger than just the one thing, right? And that's how fun these things can be. And there's quite a few things that we've done in Battlefront 2 that kind of stuck for many other IPs and games and films and stuff, and I'm super proud of that. Now, before we go any further, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, which is NordVPN. Now, one of the things that all games have in common is definitely security. Now, we're using the same password. It's definitely not the safest thing. I did it for many years, and when the worst came to worst, it was really scary when you get hacked and then you're actually scrambling to actually get your stuff and your content and your emails and all kinds of stuff back. Now, enter NordPass, the sponsor of this video. Now, NordPass, really cool tool. I love to use it. It remembers all of your passwords. It generates super strong ones. And most importantly, it keeps everything locked with zero-knowledge encryption, which is the most important thing, because not even NordVPN knows what your password is, and that ultimately is what you need for your passwords. Now, right now, NordPass has a great deal. 53% off plus 3 free months. Now, with this amazing discount, there's no better time to test it than now, especially if you don't have a password manager yet. Now, link down below, and thanks to NordPass for sponsoring this video. Now let's talk about staying faithful to Star Wars. How do you make sure that characters that look so impressive on film, like in books? How do you make sure that those characters are basically reproduced faithfully in game? Because after all, games have a lot of spinning plates. If you think about it, that's how you control your character, the environment around the character, how the character dies, ragdolls, attacks. On the BB-8, for example, how do you make the BB-8 attack like a hero? How do you actually kind of attack a Darth Vader or a Luke as a BB-8? So we found out they have cables, and the cables in the movies, he actually shoots them, and I think he only does it once within the ship, I believe, for those cables that he has inside of them. And that's enough for us to basically go, okay, we can use the cables to basically spin them around and get that to be the attack, right? Same thing with a little, like lighter that he has. I think he only uses it a few times to say, yeah, thumbs up, but that became an attack for us. It became something special for us to use. So it's picking up on those little things and start kind of adding them to the game to make sure that whenever there's an attack or a movement or there's something to be done in game, it happens with intention and reason. Now let's move on to section 3, which is gameplay versus animation. Now, how do you balance Star Wars authenticity with game clarity? This is going to be for not just for animation. It's going to be for sound designers. It's going to be for designers. It's going to be for level designers, for artists. Everybody's trying to keep this game as authentic as possible. And for us in animation, it's about movement. So how do you actually get these characters to move with that authenticity from that Star Wars have? And this is where characters such as Yoda come into mind, because Yoda is so powerful, to a Vader status. Vader in a game was the tallest character, right? So how do you make a character as small as Yoda, which is like super tiny, right? To actually walk the same distances, run the same distances, attack the same distances as a Vader, right? Because if a Yoda and a Vader come into a clash in game, Yoda needs to hold his ground. And then the other thing is about his attacks, right? So we've seen how Yoda attacks in the movies because he just bounces all over the place, which is great, right? How can you make those fit the metrics and the systems within the game that we have? And that was a really difficult challenge for sure. But the way we actually got it to do it is for Yoda to skip as he's actually running or walking. And he ended up being super cute as we actually saw the character coming to life, because now it looks like Yoda is actually trying to keep up to pace, but it looks like a Yoda run. It doesn't look like a Vader walk or any other character's walk. So that makes it a little bit more distinct. And another thing to mention here is that a lot of the times design had amazing ideas and animation would pick up on these ideas and then execute what we thought was best when it comes to movement. But sometimes things just don't fit, so we have to go back to design and then start the process that I mentioned in the beginning yet again, because this thing is not working. So what else can we try that is Ewok or that is BB-8 that allows the character to be unique? And this takes me into our next subject, which is a collaboration across teams. Now, animation in a game like this doesn't happen in isolation. We have to work with many other departments, and all these departments have a saying into what animation is doing, and this is why showing your work early on helps you a ton, because if people have a feeling for how a character is moving, and now we have an audio pass where now the character is sounding a very specific way. Like if you imagine a Droideka opening up and those cannons kind of going up and how those cannons shoot, that is a specific image that you have right now in your mind, but it comes with sound, right? And this sound pass makes a huge difference. Now, if the animations all of a sudden don't actually match the sound that we are looking for, we need to go back and actually rework those animations to make sure that they feel as powerful as the sound is making you believe, right? And it's the same thing when it comes to art, textures, VFX is another one that is really big. Sometimes you actually want the VFX to be like the VFX inform the animation to make sure that the VFX are really big, but the animation is very tiny. So can we make it a little bit more big so it matches the VFX? This is the balance that we have to strike all the time, and it starts normally with design. Then it trickles down from art to animation and to all these other departments, but we have to work in tandem, and not until the game comes out that we always tweaking these things, and it goes up and down the chain, the pipeline, like as we like to call it. So basically we get the right look, and it's ultimately up to the game director to decide, yes, this is done, and now we can move on to the next hero or the next character or whatever it is. Now, a good example of this working across teams was definitely the trooper factions. There was a bunch of them, and we had to basically go in between each faction and find out exactly what made them interesting to play, to select, because our goal as game developers is that every single character that you pick up on Star Wars, when you play it, it feels and looks absolutely fantastic, and you'll feel like you want to pick this character. And it's very much the way I saw it. That's the thing that I take most pride, to work with others, to make sure that basically the one character is bigger than the sum of people going into this character, because the work should be invisible. If we do our job well, it should be just Count Dooku, just a Droideka, just a BB-8. But the amount of decision making that goes behind the scenes, between departments, it's insane. Now I want to close this by talking about personality through the front end, which was another challenge that we had in the game. Now, I touched on this on episode 1 about how we actually had to find the best way to actually get the front end to look amazing, and we went through a few iterations. But then when we had the front end that we wanted for the final game, it was all about bringing the character, the personality of each character within the front end. And to going back to the trooper factions, one of the first trooper factions that we wanted to do was the dual wielding faction. That was difficult to pull off because there was a lot of technicalities to get two weapons to be on screen at once and feel good. But most importantly, like, what makes them different from any other trooper faction? And I didn't know this, but this is one of the coolest factions in Star Wars. It's beloved and people love it. And I remember perfectly that when we actually started thinking about this, how we're going to capture it, how we're going to handkey it, how we're going to mocap it, we decided to eventually mocap it. And it was genuinely me in the suit trying a bunch of different things with two weapons. So it's me kind of like trying to, normally it would be like something like you just walk into screen and then you do something and then you basically go back into your idle. And at some point I was trying things with the weapons and I just basically twirled them, and for some reason, I don't even know why, I actually kind of like hit the butts of the weapons together.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
And that to me felt good and it felt unique, because I was looking for what can I do that is not just a spin, because that's kind of like played out, just a spin. So what can I do that is different? And I mentioned I did this and I swirled it and put it up and all these other things. And then we put it in game, and then people loved it internally. People were like, oh my god, this is great, this is really cool. So we were happy with it, and then we were waiting to see what the player base said. And what was interesting is that, like, I didn't even look very much into the lore of the faction, but it felt to me that what people were seeing was very much what they imagined beyond the books, talking about this faction and all these other things. And they were saying how like awesome it was and all these other things. And this ultimately became that community layer that I mentioned in the last video, about how awesome it was to have the community feedbacking to us about what they thought, because that to me was fuel for me to then add different things to the other factions when it comes to animations. I enjoyed going back to the main menu all the time to find the specific traits of the characters. I do remember the design team, fun note, used to come along very often to check out what we were doing with the characters, because they were always curious to see what we come up with, and it was a lot of fun to work with the designers for that one reason. Now, that's some of the things that we did in Battlefront, and this goes for every single game that I've worked in so far. Bringing character, it's the most important thing in games. Now, Star Wars is Star Wars because of the personality of each character. The lightsabers are cool, the blasters are cool, but it's the characters that make Star Wars. And if you don't, to me at least, it feels that if you're not true to what the characters are, and the idea and the illusion that the fans have of these characters, then I think you basically lost the battle from the very beginning. It's very much about like feeling in the controller when you move it, to feel like you are that thing. Doesn't matter if it's BB-8 or an Ewok or Count Dooku or Darth Vader or like Yoda. all of those characters need to feel a specific way and look a specific way in order for you to feel like that illusion that what you see is what you get and is exactly how it was in the movies, even though in reality is nothing like it is in the movies. We just had to adapt it a bunch, right? So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it was interesting enough. I might do an episode 3 if there's enough noise in the comments for me to do another one, and I hope you enjoyed it. And until the next one, stay well, stay safe. Peace. If you enjoyed the video or found it helpful, go ahead and hit the like button. If you super enjoyed it, leave a super thanks. It's like leaving a little tip and it directly supports the channel. If you haven't already, subscribe and turn on post notifications so you can continue to see my videos and get your weekly dose of better.